along Mary Creek and we're just arriving at Coburg Lake. We're going to have a look at some of the volcanic rocks that are in this area. So we're at Coburg Lake, along Mary Creek. You can see some lava flows just above the weir here that have been dated to about 2.3 million years old. You can also see Pentridge in the background, the Melbourne's famous former penitentiary. One of the main reasons that Pentridge is here is because the lava rocks, the basalts, provided a source for the quarrying rocks that could be used to build the penitentiary. And so, in a sense, Coburg has a rich history that relates to its geology. The other really interesting thing about this area is it was a very sacred place for the Aboriginal people living in this region. There's artifacts that have been found throughout Mary Creek, largely through this area, and the name Mary Mary means very rocky. So just to paint the picture for you, we're standing on top of a 2.3 million year old lava flow. The volcanoes from which this lava poured out of are 30 to 50 kilometers to the north of current Melbourne. So they erupted, they sent these big Hawaiian-style lava flows coming down into this environment. But at that time, Melbourne already had a pre-existing topography. So one of the fascinating things geologically about Melbourne is when you look at a geological map and you see that eastern Melbourne has all these rolling hills of primarily Silurian sandstone and mudstone. You know about that because you can dig holes in your property, you see it exposed in road cuts, you see it exposed along the Eastern Freeway. And Western Melbourne has a much flatter landscape. When people dig holes or look at cuttings there, they see that that's primarily basalt. And that's because these volcanoes that were erupting north of Melbourne flowed in, basically infilled that landscape and flattened it out. But it tells us about paleotopography as well. It tells us that the areas of eastern Melbourne were much higher at that time, and so the lava flows either didn't get to them or sort of went around them as such. Now, when I think about that in the modern context, what does that mean? Well, first off, it helps shape the landscape that we currently live in. So when you go out to eastern Melbourne, you see a lot of swaling hills. You drive up and over these hills, and they are actually structurally controlled, a lot of them. A lot of them relate to the folds and the faults in the Silurian sandstone and mudstones. And so there's some really interesting elements here. There's the long-term landscape history, but also how we represent all of this on a geological map. So one of the things I'm going to do here, because I'm on the top of this lava flow, I'm going to get an estimate of the elevation. Now to do that, I might use LiDAR data, I might use any other digital elevation models, or I might just use something as simple as a handheld GPS. So if I get the elevation of the top of the lava flow here, and I know that the lava flow is present all the way down to the base of Mary Creek, I can estimate the minimum thickness of that flow. It might go much deeper, it might not. We'll be looking for places where we can see the contact between these lava flows and the underlying sedimentary rocks, which are much older, which we saw at previous locations. So I've got my GPS here, and I'm going to mark a waypoint, and that will tell me what the elevation is. I'll then go down to the creek level and I'll get some idea about the minimum thickness.